Hi, my name is David Bergvinson, and for the September 7th, 2021 edition of the World Weather Watcher, we're going to be looking at extreme weather events around the world and the weather data behind them. Over the last week, we've seen many reports in news channels around the world of weather variability and extreme weather events that are impacting society, be it our low level of water reserves in reservoirs such as Lake Mead in the United States, impacting western U.S. agriculture. We also see on the other extreme, on the East Coast, the impact of Hurricane Ida and the torrential rains and subsequent damage and loss of life that resulted from that extreme weather event. Or places like Madagascar that have contributed very little to greenhouse gases and yet are facing a humanitarian crisis because of repeated crop failures due to drought. So all of this is really the result of weather variability increasing and having an impact on our food systems, our infrastructure, and even quality of life. When we look to the last 30 days for precipitation, we see that in the Corn Belt of the United States, slightly drier than normal conditions, while we've seen good growing conditions with above normal rainfall for Mexico all the way down to the northern part of South America. Same is true for West Africa that experienced good growing conditions throughout this season. We've also seen good growing conditions, although below normal rainfall for India and Southeast Asia, and slightly lower than normal rainfall conditions for France and central part of Europe the last 30 days. When we zoom into the case of New Jersey and New York due to Hurricane Ida's rainfall, we see that the last 2 weeks, rainfall for these areas has been roughly 4 to 5 times the level of normal, indicated by these blue bars and the long-term normal shown in the gold line. In the case of New Jersey, this amounted to approximately 300 millimeters of additional rain over a 2-week period, leading to extensive flooding. The same was true for New York, approximately 200 millimeters above normal rainfall. And this is a challenge for urban areas that have large surface area covered in concrete and asphalt, resulting in extensive runoff and the resulting damage to infrastructure and even loss of life as people were caught off guard by the rapid flooding that occurred, especially in New York. When we look to precipitation in the next 15 days, we see drier than normal conditions for the Corn Belt of the United States that will impact on corn and soybean production. We also see drier than normal conditions for parts of northern Brazil, drier than normal conditions for the eastern part of Europe, while we see wetter than normal conditions for much of West Africa and central part of India. Looking to maximum temperature, the last 30 days have seen warmer than normal conditions by approximately 3 to 4 degrees Celsius for the eastern part of Canada, the Corn Belt of the United States, as well as warmer than normal conditions for Argentina up through to the southern part of Brazil. Most of Africa has experienced warmer than normal conditions the past 30 days, as is the case for the Middle East through Kazakhstan and the central part of Russia. Looking to the next 15 days, we see for the United States much warmer than normal conditions across most of the U.S., as well as for Brazil, and warmer than normal conditions for central part of Africa, as well as warmer than normal conditions for much of Europe. Looking to precipitation for the next 15 days, we see that for most of the U.S. and Canada, precipitation is in the forecast with the exception of Southern California. We see good rains in the forecast for West Africa, for most of India and Southeast Asia, as well as for most of Central Europe. When we look to the ratio of precipitation to potential evapotranspiration, an index we use for rain-fed agriculture, areas shown in red are below the threshold for rain-fed agriculture. Areas in green have sufficient moisture to support rain-fed agriculture. So we see that in the case of Mexico, good conditions for rain-fed agriculture the next 15 days. We also see the same is true for West Africa, the central and northern parts of India, the southern parts of China, and throughout Southeast Asia. WatchER has taken FAO's Ag-Ecological zones and developed a dynamic real-time index that allows us to look at agriculture production in the context of historical rainfall patterns and what we're currently observing to help farmers and policymakers understand the potential risk of food insecurity in different parts of the world. And so we break this down into 4 areas: arid areas, marginal areas, suitable areas, and humid areas for crop production. And we look at the long-term normal and compare it to the current conditions to see if we should be issuing an alert for drier than normal conditions. So using this index, we can look around the world to see where rain-fed agriculture in particular, but where agriculture is doing well, such as most of Mexico and the northern part of South America, all of West Africa with the exception of parts of Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, most of India with the exception of the southern part of India, and most of the southern part of China with the exception of the extreme southeastern portion of China. When we look to the next 15 days with this index, we see that conditions are concerning for the Corn Belt of the United States. We also see some concern for parts of West Africa, such as Senegal, parts of southern India, much drier than expected and therefore likely to have an impact, especially on commodities such as spices that are often cultivated in the southern part of India. We see some concern, though, for parts of southern Europe. We also see the impact of the autumn onset for cooler than what's required to support agriculture in the eastern and western parts of northern Canada. When we zoom in using this Ag-Ecological Zone Index for Africa, we see across the Sahel of Africa, the last 30 days have been very good for agriculture, as indicated by this blue color. We also see, though, for the next 15 days that the northwestern part of Senegal is going to be dry and likely will impact on agriculture over the next 15 days. Going over and zooming into a specific commodity within West Africa, we can see that in the case of cacao, when we look across the growing season from April through to the end of July, drier than normal conditions predispose the cacao plants to these very humid conditions that we now see the last 2 weeks and into the 2-week forecast, making it ideal for this important disease called black pod that is able to dramatically reduce the yield as well as quality of cacao harvested in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And so this is something to be on the alert for and taking appropriate action. When we look to the Midwest of the United States, last week we talked about these drier conditions for the eastern part of Iowa and the northern part of Illinois. And this has continued, and in the forecast, this will be further exacerbated by even drier conditions for the eastern part of Iowa and northern Illinois, predisposing crops like corn to diseases such as Aspergillus flavus, a fungus that produces a mycotoxin. And so this area should be monitored carefully for aflatoxin at the time of harvest. When we go over to India, we see in the case of southern India that there are pockets along the eastern coast of India that have been much drier than normal. These areas are actually important for spice production. When we look to the forecast, though, we see that this area is being expanded that is under water stress and therefore an alert for crop production in all of the southern part of India as well as Sri Lanka. If analytics like this are of interest to you, I invite you to go to our adapter platform at apps.aware.com where you can start your weather analytics journey for free. Until next week, take care.